welkom by ons weeklikse vergadering, Marlene. Hierdie is ons hermaningsspan. Ons het een keer 'n maand ons gesamentlik, maar nie maand nie, want ons is te besig, maar hier is ons spanetjie. So baie welkom aan Snymans en Vennote. Vir die wat nie vir Marlene ken nie, is Marlene Strauss, sy is een van die Vennote by Snymans en Vennote, en Madeleine is die girltjie wat so gaaf is om partykeer vir ons te kom gesels oor goed wat belangrik is en wat ons behoort te weet. Nou Madeleine,
dis reg.
Ja. En 'n spesiale welkom aan Paul. Ons het 'n nuwe lid in ons span.
Ja.
En Paul, ek weet nie, would you like to introduce yourself quickly to the team, and then also the lawyers can know who you
Not
are?
at all. I don't want to introduce myself now, but I will. My name is Paul, first day here, and let's see how it goes. And come from a business background, so I'm excited, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
That's all.
we are very excited to have him. So, yeah. Marlene,
Dankie Jana.
oor na jou.
Thank you very much.
Dankie.
Thanks guys, thanks for having us. So, Madeleine phoned me and said, Jana said that we can do a session with you guys, and she would like me to speak about a golden nugget in the property industry. Yo, this got my mind going. What specific to you guys can we talk about that could be a golden nugget? So I started looking at the evolution of the estate agent profession in South Africa, and I started looking back of where did this profession start off, and how did it evolve to where we are today? And I'm getting chills when I think about it, because it started off as almost a incidental to, there wasn't a formal profession called the estate agent profession in South Africa, and the landlord and whoever he consulted with or happened to come by that wanted to buy his property, they sort of had a mutual agreement, and so a transaction took place and it was registered, and it went from there. And then in the early 1990s there came a bit of a uptick in the property market, especially in Johannesburg and Cape Town. And the first Estate Agents Act came into effect in 1927.
Sure.
That regulated the estate agent's profession a little bit.
Net nadat ek begin het.
Dus hoe ek neem aan hulle het nooit die official eerste estate agent ooit met 'n deal gemaak het gerekord.
I doubt it.
Yeah, that's so weird.
Yeah, no, I doubt it. So then also in 1937, the Deeds Registrations Act came into being. And that is the act that we use until today, that regulates how we physically register properties in the South African Deeds Registry system. Then, of course, it was the war. And then post 1940 to 1970, there was obviously a massive uptick in the economy of South Africa. And that's where it really started happening for the estate agent profession, where we started dealing with buyers and sellers and tenants. And there was a very big need for further formalization and regulation of the estate agency profession. And that is when, in 1976, the very famous Estate Agency Affairs Board came into being, right? Also, 1975, the Interest Rate Act came into being. And that is an act that regulates how interest rates are being taken up and down, right? The Reserve Bank looks at things, they make decisions, it implements. And the whole idea of the Interest Rate Act was to regulate that it is fair how an interest rate goes up and down, right? So as you guys can see, as things started happening in the profession, there's certain things that started happening that needed to be regulated. And so the Interest Rate Act came into being. One that I'm assuming a lot of you guys will think is fairly new was in 1977, the National Building Regulations and Building Standards Act came into being. The famous one, when a purchaser says, I want building plans. That one. It came into being in 1977 already. Okay. Something that many years later only really had an effect on you guys, where there started to becoming these questions of, is this legal? Can I do this? Am I allowed to do that? What about the swimming pool that's not on the plan, etc. Okay. Then in 1980 to 1990, this is what they call the era of growth and regulation. So the Estate Agency Affairs Board and the Act came into being in 1996. The Alienation of Land Act came into account. That was in 1981. That is the act that says every contract must be in writing and signed by the parties. Paper. That's when paper came into effect.
Sure.
Everything needed to be recorded, everything needs to be signed, everything related to immovable property must be on paper. Okay. The Trust Property Control Act came into account. Something that I don't know if you guys are aware of, but you guys deal with on a very regular basis. When you have a trust that buys or sells property, your transaction is governed by the Trust Property Control Act. Okay. The Sectional Title Act came into being in 1986. This is when we all of a sudden had this spurge in the property market, no longer just full title properties, but all of a sudden we're getting the sectional title units. We go, okay, now this needs to be regulated, so the Sectional Title Act came into account. Then in 1994, what happened in 1994? End of apartheid. Right. 1990. Okay.
The Big Bang.
The Big Bang. 1996. What's the most important act in South Africa? Anybody? Ever heard about the Constitution?
Oh, yes.
The Constitution is the most important act in South Africa when it comes to land ownership. Because Section 25 says each and every person has the right to own property. Okay. So all of a sudden we have this change in South Africa, and the Constitution now says everybody has the right for this. And here we start a whole new era in property law in South Africa. Started with the Constitution. We then got the PI Act, Prevention of Illegal Evictions, right? You guys can hear, this is all protection laws, right? Of people, obviously, our landlords as well, but mostly people can't be treated unfairly, okay? So prevention of illegal occupation. The Rental Housing Act, for the guys who do rentals, right? The rental process has now been regulated and formulated. Then in the early 2000s, all of a sudden there was this technological advancement. All of a sudden we are having property portals, internet, websites, Property 24, private property, all of those. Social media happened, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. All of a sudden, the way we are doing things, the way we are advertising, that whole process starts changing. FOOPS comes in, capital gains tax. All of a sudden, we are being regulated on capital gains. It's a further leg to the Income Tax Act to say, you are making this profit on your property, we want a piece of that, right? 2001. I don't know if you guys realize this, but the FIC Act came into account 2001 already. It was sort of not on hold, but it was sort of brewing there in the lower ends of things, and people weren't really taking it seriously. Government wasn't really enforcing it, but it's been around since 2001 already, right? Only years later, we saw this massive spurge in FICA. Now you have to, do all of these things and know your clients and collect documents and be compliant and all of that. We had the Agricultural Land Act that came from government that said we need to protect our farmland. We need to make sure that farmland that's zoned for farming and for agriculture needs to be protected. It needs to stay like that. So we're going to make it difficult for people to develop that, right? It's not difficult. We're going to put in processes in place if you want to develop that, because we need to protect our farmland. Or the National Credit Act came into account, right? Reckless lending. The banks were giving 110% bonds to everybody, and just before, how many of these people were actually in the property industry in 2000s?
Property van 2007, 2008.
Yes, there we go. The banks were giving bonds, you cannot believe it. And then all of a sudden the economy tanked, the banks got burnt so badly that the National Credit Act came into account to say, we need to regulate the banking systems to say, you guys can't just go and give people money, and then if something happens, expect them to pay it back. Because had you done this correctly, you would have known in a stressed economy, those people wouldn't be able to afford that. Therefore, that is considered reckless lending, and we can then penalize you, financial institution, for doing that to the consumer. Talking about consumer, then the Consumer Protection Act came into account, right? Which all of a sudden looked at what are we considering a service that we are delivering, and how are we protecting the people that receive that service. If you buy a second-hand car, are you, and the guy didn't disclose to you that it's been written off, am I protected in a way, right? With you guys, where are we finding the Consumer Protection Act? In development properties, etc. That brought in a further need for the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act, so that we can tell body corporates and homeowners associations how they are supposed to be operated and where they are being held responsible.
Does the homeowners association also fall under that?
Yes, it's considered a community scheme, correct. And then all of a sudden, Protection of Personal Information, 2013. The Property Valuation Act, 2014, which tells us how municipalities are allowed to value properties and calculate rates and taxes. So all of this is based on legislation that you guys are dealing with. Then after 2020, we've got the Property Practitioners Act, where your name changed and where the governing body changed. Of course, further regulation there on property managers, auctioneers, property negotiators, bridging companies, etc. So being a real estate agent, being a property practitioner, when I looked at this evolution that this has gone through, the one thing that really struck me was it went from something to do in an amount of time that you've got available. We very often saw women, once their kids are going to school, between 8 and 1, the wives would become their estate agents, right?
Housewife.
It went from that to a highly regulated, highly professional profession in South Africa. It's no longer just a gap filler for people. It is so regulated, and there's such a lot of things that is applicable to you guys. It's no longer just, oh, I'm the estate agent that bring a buyer and a seller together. In order for you guys to do that, there is such a lot that you guys need to know, especially when it comes to regulation, compliance, and legislation. And I think that is when I looked at the Property Practitioners Act. What is happening right now in our country, I don't know if you guys know, but the electronic deeds registration system that was signed into law in 2019 is implementing on the 1st of April. Don't know if you guys are aware of this. We're having deeds office fee changes that's implementing in April, where all of a sudden we've got extra fees that's being charged to our clients. We have lodgement cover fees that we now need to pay. So every time a batch goes into the deeds office, it's not just the deeds registration fee that they're going to have to pay. they're going to have to pay per cover that we lodge. So if the seller now lost his title deed and we now need to do a VA application for him for a duplicate title deed, he's now going to have to pay the cost of the transfer, the cost of obtaining the original title deed, but he's going to have to pay for 2 covers being lodged. One is the transfer and one is the application for the deed.
Julle weet tog nie wat daai syfers is.
50 rand per cover.
Okay.
Per lodgement. Per lodgement, per rejection, per registration, doesn't matter. The minute that cover goes into the deeds office, that fee will now be active. And all the deeds office fees are now going to have to be paid up front.
Sure.
So where we as attorneys used to get accounts from the deeds office with your monthly spend at the deeds office, we are now going to have to upfront pay the deeds office. These are things that have massive repercussions in the processes that we are doing, right? When we collect money, when we process things, how we do things is massive changes in our industry. So to get back to my nuggets for our chat this morning, what I realized was people in the property industry needs to be so adaptable to change. You guys need to be like chameleons, constantly, ever changing, in a very dynamic, changing environment, constantly. You guys need to be able to adapt. And you guys need to be hungry and know the knowledge, know how it works, know the legislation that comes in, because it's got a massive impact on your day to day. And remember, this is a profession. Don't let anybody ever tell you guys anything else. Thank you.
In the bank, then my buyer could borrow from that investment. That's how we roll. That's how I started. So don't tell me the market is tough. And I thought and then 2007, 25% interest rates. What did the government do to clamp down on the banks? 25% interest rates. No sales were made.
Yeah.
We were hungry for a year. So yeah, we went through terminal times. But I am so pleased that we are a professional.
Exactly.
Ons is nie nou meer die verveelde huisvrou
Correct.
en die afgetrede pensionaris bedryf nie. Nee, ons is 'n professie. So wees trots op wat jy doen. Want as jy kyk na die kwalifikasie wat jy gaan moet doen om jou lisensie te behou, dan besef jy dit is 'n professie.
Ja.
Ons staan daar by onderwysers, by hierdie professionele ouens, want ons is nie net amateurs nie. So dankie Marlene.
Pleasure,
Dit was nou verskriklik interessant. Dankie.
Pleasure.